Hello, hello, ciao. I'm excited about this talk. In this talk, what we're going to be looking at is how to turn overwhelm, how to use the structure of overwhelm to develop really powerful positive feelings in us. So we're going to look at inverting uh, overwhelm so that we can do two things. One is so that we can learn to overwhelm the things that we're working on. So rather than being overwhelmed, we want to use that to overwhelm the things that we're trying to accomplish. And the other thing is we're going to use the structure of overwhelm to flood ourselves with positive feelings, feelings that we want to have rather than something like overwhelm that might be taking us by surprise. So let's get to it. Um, so in general, I would say most people experience overwhelm from time to time. Certainly people who are very career focused and maybe taking on more than they probably should be, but it's quite common when you're very busy with work and then something else may come in and it might tip the scales to where you feel overwhelmed. And so what we want to do here is look at what's the cognitive structure of overwhelm. And in other words, the idea is that the way that we're structuring our thoughts are creating a particular response in us. Um, it's not just what we're picturing, it's how we're picturing things, or what we're saying to ourselves and how we're saying things to ourselves that puts us in a state of overwhelm. Nothing is inherently overwhelming or otherwise, right? If you take things one at a time, you're not experiencing overwhelm. So usually people describe overwhelm as uh, too many things to do, too many things coming at them at once, and you can hear indications of what people are thinking and how they're thinking them in their language. So if they say many things are coming at me, there's a good chance that they're making pictures of things coming at them. Many people, when they're in a state of overwhelm, are picturing many, many things, and very often they're picturing them above them, sort of towering in their direction. Um, One of my mentors, Stephen Leeds, likes to ask people, like, if you took all those things that you're picturing and you put them on the ground, how would you feel about them then? And for many people, that achieves at least the beginning of the part A that I was talking about. That instead of feeling overwhelmed, now you're sort of towering over the things that you're doing, and you start to feel that you can overwhelm the things that you're working on. I would say we can even take that further. But the first thing is to notice what's your cognitive structure for overwhelm. So to do that, what you want to do is think of a time, maybe it's a current time, maybe it's a time in the past, or even something that you're imagining that brings up a feeling of overwhelm for you. And then what you can begin to do is just notice what's going on for you internally. Are you making big looming pictures of tons of tasks that you have to do? That's what many people do. Or they might have a lot of pictures kind of shuffling back and forth. Or like I mentioned earlier, the pictures may be coming towards them. So whatever you notice the structure of how you're doing it, because that's your structure if you want to experience overwhelm. Now, if you want to step out of that and your goal is to overwhelm anything that you're working on, what I would do is take that big cluster, like Steve said, put it down on the ground, maybe off to one side, and then we want to flip it. So I would take one piece, one little piece of something that you're working on, put it in front of you, and make sure you're above it. You are towering above that thing. And I would be amazed if that doesn't change your feelings about your relationship to that thing. So let's say you have to write a dissertation. That sounds overwhelming. It sounds giant and looming. Again, if you put that down on the ground and you imagine, you know what, right now I'm going to work on uh, coming up with an introduction. So just one little piece of this big project and put that down on the ground and really kind of loom over it. And my goal here is to get the feeling that I can at least engage and really give my all to that one task. And then once I've made progress on that, even if I don't finish it, once I've made progress, I can put that off to the side and take on another piece and keep working this way, one in turn after the other, until my pile starts to whittle down, hopefully to nothing. So that's the way that I like to invert the structure of overwhelm so that I'm able to overwhelm the things that I'm working on. Now, in the beginning, I mentioned the second thing we wanted to do here, like actually using the structure of overwhelm to overwhelm ourselves with good feelings. So, you know, earlier you noticed your structure of overwhelm. Maybe it was a lot of big pictures kind of looming over you or moving in your direction. Whatever the structure is, we're going to leave the structure okay, but we're going to swap out some of the content. So let's say you wanted to be overwhelmed with joyous feelings of joy or feelings of perhaps joyous anticipation. What you want to do is start to think of and collect examples of things that are joyous for you. Maybe, and they don't have to be big things. We're just going to collect a lot of tiny examples at first. So it could be like, oh, I'm going to go meet a friend later this week for lunch. And that's something that I experience some joy in looking forward to. Maybe it's the thought of going away, going on a trip, going on a vacation. Maybe it's just looking forward to reading a book. Or it could be the joy of thinking of, a milestone that you're going to hit in your career or in your education, and you can really imagine it, and that can bring you some joy. Or the other thing you can do is begin to collect examples of previous experiences that have given you joy. So it could be things that you've already accomplished, or things that are very emotional for you. Maybe, high points in relationships where you really feel a sense of joy and love. And then once you've collected a bunch of these, I would do at least a half dozen, but probably more like 20 or 30. And then what you want to do is make really big pictures of these and begin to collage all these wonderful, joyous experiences. And I like to run them like almost like a deck of cards, like fluttering towards me, of all the things that I'm excited about. And by the way, like this is the way that I think about my planning for the year. I have this backlog of things that I'm incredibly excited to be working on, and I just keep flipping through them, and it really overwhelms me with joy and excitement in anticipating the things that I'm working on and that I'm enjoying, and the things that I'm accomplishing. So we're using the same exact structure of overwhelm to give us a sense of overwhelming joy. Now, I picked joy, and I picked, my interpretation of the meaning of joy and things that are joyous for me. Yours are going to be different. But you can also use this structure of overwhelm to build feelings of confidence or competence. There are certain activities that when I think about them, I just know that I have a very high level of consistency. Things that I know I'm good at. Like I like teaching guitar, and I think I'm pretty good at it. So when I think about teaching guitar, it's this feeling of like, yes, I can really do that. So if I want to build this feeling of overwhelming competence or confidence, I want to collect a bunch of examples of those. So, for me, it's guitar, it's doing movement or exercise. I love cooking, so I might throw some of that in there. And again, collecting a bunch of examples and then putting them in that same kind of 3D surround sound structure of overwhelm. And before you know it, you'll start to feel incredibly confident and hopefully competent. I'm using both those words. One of the founders of NLP, Richard Bandler, pointed out that a lot of times when people are asking for confidence, what they really need is is competence. They need to actually get experience and get good at something. But what I find is the things where I feel competent, I actually do feel confident. So that for me, they go hand in hand. So again, recap really quickly. First thing we did is inverted feelings of overwhelm so that we could overwhelm an activity. We did that by taking all these pictures, putting them on the ground, and then taking one piece at a time and really being on top of it, so to speak. And then the second half, we use the structure of overwhelm to flood ourselves with whatever feeling we want. You know, I use the example of joy or the example of confidence. As with anything that I share that's an exercise, I recommend, practice it 6, 7, 30 times until it starts to become like immediately available to you. You don't, the time to develop, to learn the structure of feeling confident, is the time is now. It's not when you need it. So you want to practice it until it's just automatically part of your behavior, that it's at the tip of your fingers when you need it. So I would recommend that you go for that. And in one of the videos that I have linked here, I am linking another talk that deals with overwhelm. So sure, if you like that, please leave a comment. Thanks.